Hey guys, and welcome to the first episode, I guess you could call it, of the 2018 season, Embrace the Journey here at Small Acre Hunting. Wanted to kind of shift it up a little bit this year, and instead of uploading numerous chopped up videos, maybe 5 minutes here, 6 minutes there throughout the year, I'm going to compile about a month's worth of material into episodes, if you will. I'll still probably upload some updates, some live Facebook stuff like I've always done, and try to incorporate maybe a few like whitetail minutes as well like I've done in the past. But basically I'm going to focus on putting together a full video that has different topics, different site visits to various properties, maybe different discussions involved in them as well. But the entirety of the season, as you can tell, is entitled Embrace the Journey. And really the purpose behind that is I think so often we as hunters can get so wrapped up in our pursuit of these amazing white-tailed deer that we pursue. Maybe we get wrapped up in all the negative aspects of hunting. Maybe we're dealing with a lot of poaching, some issues, maybe work isn't allowing us to get out, whatever it might be. I think a lot of times we as hunters forget to just step back and realize that we need to embrace the journey that we're given. And that may mean different things throughout even one season, but it definitely means something different every single year. And I think we need to realize that. So go ahead and sit back, relax, and let's get this season started. Small Acre Hunting's 2018 Embrace the Journey is brought to you in partnership with Real World Wildlife Products, Radix Trail Cameras, and Treehopper LLC. Hey guys, welcome to, I guess you could say, the first episode of the 2018 season of a full length. You know, this video is probably going to be around 25 to 35 minutes, somewhere in there, and it's going to include a couple different things, but it's actually February 17th or something like that today as I'm shooting this video for the prior video. But I'm actually at the property today. I've got my handsaw and I'm going to be working on doing a little bit of hinge cutting, a little bit of bedding, sculpting in certain areas. I might work on the tree line that you're about to see in this first video. This first video, we're going to go right over here next to where the parking, and there's an alleyway down there, and I'll set it up in the video. It's a little area that I want to work on some bedding there. And then I'm going to take you down a few days later to the southern edge of the property where we're going to be getting it logged out. This is the time of the year where I'd normally be firing up the chainsaw and cutting a bunch of trees and such, but because we've got logging going on, I got to kind of wait because I want to get the bigger logs out, because you would not want to hinge and then try to log around everything. It just makes a mess of it, makes it hard for the logger. So hopefully, fingers crossed, the logger can get in before spring for me. That way, before green up, at least on this end of things, I can start sculpting that into a better bedding area. Because if you don't have bedding, food plots are pointless, watering holes are pointless. If you can't give the deer secure cover on your property, you might as well, you really are leaving your success dependent on other properties. So let's go ahead and start those two videos now. I'm going to go on and walk on back and start working now, and you'll probably see footage of what I'm doing today in the next episode. Hey guys, welcome to the new 22. It is a very snowy day. This is actually less snow than when I pulled in originally and I was getting all the cameras set up. You're actually setting inside the truck and I'm shooting out the window so the snow doesn't get moisture all over my camera. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was, you're probably wondering what this blue barrel is. I came in, we planted a bunch of Norway spruces, and I noticed 2 of them got ate by rabbits. We planted so many of them I didn't bother fencing them, and I haven't had an issue. But this year the winter has been very frigid, and it doesn't shock me that 2 of them got ate. There's a barrel here, and then there's a barrel behind me as well, and the bottoms are cut out, so they were sitting over here. I picked them up and they're on top of 2 Norway spruces that I don't want to have get ate. The first thing I want to talk to you about that is a plan here at the new 22 is this edge right here, you can see this corridor that shoots on back. It's bedding all on this side of everything, and they actually bed along this tree line somewhat, but not as much. I've walked it. There's only 2 spots really where I've ever found depressions or bedding, and I want to encourage that a little bit more. This tree line is about 30 yards at most, probably 15 to 30 yards off of my property line on this side of things. As you're looking at it to the right, I can actually walk behind that tree line and everything. There's no trees in that line except for maybe one up here towards this edge that I could possibly hunt in the future, but I think I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to hunt back there. So the first thing I want to do is along this corridor, I want to make bedding up against this old fence, hinging high, providing both thermal cover, sight blocking, and also always a couple escapes. I'm going to lay down some logs in there. They love backrests. You can create those from real low hinge cuts, or you can actually carry and put logs in, which is what I'll probably do predominantly. But along this corridor, this is a natural walk point, and there's a whole bunch of scrapes and rubs that pop up along this line. You can actually see that one cedar tree in there used to be, until I brush hogged and made this a corridor for him to walk, that cedar tree was completely healthy from the bottom all the way up. You can tell now that it's been rubbed pretty severely last year and this year, and I probably should protect it, otherwise that thing's gonna die some year. But I don't really care if they destroy it. It's not a big deal. It's not a money tree. Cedars actually counteract my apple trees to a point. They can cause cedar apple rust. So I've gotten a lot of rust resistant apple trees, but again, the less cedar trees, the less risk of that disease spreading to any apple trees I may have here. So that's the first spot I'm gonna do this year. So you'll be seeing that in future videos. And one other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was this section right here has a really high stem count. This has been a fallow field for probably, looking on aerials, anywhere from 7 to 12 years. And it's starting to get to the point where it's just too thick. I'm going to talk to the local fire department about possibly doing a prescribed burn throughout here, and really encourage that regeneration of woody browse and native forbs to pop back up and be exactly what I want it to be. You know, it is a tremendous deer habitat spot right now. However, it's starting to become less and less because it's just starting to overgrow that regeneration of successional growth that we want to look at. And I don't want this to stop being a viable bedding area, food source for the native forbs and everything, because it really is an awesome about 5 to 7 acre chunk of my property. And the clover chicory plot is up behind you about 70-80 yards up by where the food plot is, with clover chicory and then apples and pear trees. And that's where I shot splits out of 2 years ago, and almost got a shot at Bertier this year. So it's definitely a work in progress, but that's one of the things that we're going to be doing in 2018, as well as a bunch of other stuff. One of the things that I'm hoping to do, and I was going to kind of walk you around today, but with the snow I'm not going to be able to, is we're going to be logging the property this year aggressively. Any tree that is of loggable size will be coming down, whether that be an oak, maple, cottonwood, pine tree. The only ones that'll stay is maybe a couple mature white oaks if I have any, and a tree stand tree. If there's a tree stand tree, I'll probably keep it. But really, I'm learning to hunt the edges a lot more. It's definitely something that I encourage a lot of people to do, so I'm not going to be going into the interior. So I don't need tree stand trees along the pond. I don't need them up in the woods. I'm really going to be hunting the edges a lot more than normal. So we're going to go ahead and check on all the cameras here while I'm here, and I think that's the only update quick I got right now. This video will continue with a little bit of habitat work and probably include the cutting, which I'm hoping to come back tomorrow and do a little bit of. So I'll bring you guys along so long as the weather's good. Hey guys, so snow let up, did some walking around back at the truck now, and Pops is actually on his way because we're gonna walk the property today and gauge size of some trees. How many pines, how many oaks, roughly how many cottonwoods, maples, what we got that the logger would be of loggable size. He wants a rough number before he decides how many days it's going to take and how many workers he needs to find and whether he can fit it in this year. So I'm going to go ahead and walk down this corridor with you. Let me turn this around. Hey guys, I'm going to kneel down because that's kind of the level of the deer. You'll notice I got this cedar tree. I'm going to use this as a marker when I come back. And if I slip on up in here a little bit, back behind this brush right here, there's an opening in there. What I want to do
is take some of these taller sassafrasses or oaks. Looks like there's a maple over here. I'm gonna try to put a little bit of a roof over this. Encourage this out front. This tree right here, it's decent, but what I'm gonna do is actually zip it. I'm gonna cut it, and hopefully, I already know it will, but this thing will sucker up and get a lot more brushier right here. I've got 2 trees over here to my right that I'm gonna hinge down along parallel to this trail and have this be a slip-in spot, and I'll make an exit out the back as well. And this will be one bed that a deer can bed on. He's got a clear shot, clear view down here. He's got brush. I'll put a backrest in here. And right here is a good travel corridor to where, especially with an east wind, a north wind, or even a south wind, depending on what bedding area he's trying to keep an eye on, he can slip in and out of here undetected to me, but that's fine. You know, if I'm hunting up there and he hears me or sees me, he's gonna be able to slip down this way and he'll be fine, he'll be safe. This is a spot too to where we park right up there every time we work pretty much, because it's the easiest spot to come into and turn around. This is a spot where he'll hear us coming well before we get out of the vehicle and everything. He'll just get out and he'll slip on back down this way, and it'll be a bed that he will always feel safe in because he is always alert of danger coming. He always has the escape route out the back that I'll cut as well, away from the main bedding area, so if something's going on in here that he doesn't want to be part of, he can hop that fence in the escape route that I cut and escape on out the back. But most likely I'll have an exit going this way, a little cut hole back there. This will be the main one that I'll encourage. There's rubs, bedding all throughout here. This is a good spot for a little bed that I can kind of make up in here. Make it only about as big for about 2 people to lay down in. Most likely you're gonna have a buck use it then. You're not gonna have a doe family use it because those are gonna be 3 or more deer usually. So I'll burrow that out. I'll cut this branch right here. And like I said, I'll bring down a little bit of overhead cover. They like to get underneath overhead cover. Provides a little bit of a security blanket for them. Gets them out of the weather if it's raining really hard, just another little tiny bit. And it works. But let's slip on up this line and see if we can't find another spot that looks good. Now it's way too thick right now for this to be a desirable spot, but I can envision it when I'm coming. I got this brush right here, this bush. I've got bush honeysuckle behind me. I'm actually pushing part of it, but I would cut it to where this is the slip in right here. You'll notice there's an old sassafras tree that I don't think is alive anymore, but it's laying on top of these, providing some overhead cover. If I were to take and sculpt some of these saplings around here, use that as a top part of the bed, if you will, I can go up in there, create a little bit of an opening, maybe come back, spot herbicide treat it in the springtime or early summer, really discourage growth up in there, make a slip trail in here, make one out the back up and over the fence, but then also always have a second one, so I'll have to get back in there. When I get in there, it'll either be up the trail or it'll be back down to the south a little bit. But another little nook right here, and if I spin you around, you'll see kind of where you are. To the north is the truck, and then on up towards the chicory, clover chicory and the fruit plot. If I continue spinning on here, we start getting over into the bedding area, and then you'll notice there's a trail, a brush hog trail, that shoots on up that way into a cleared opening that we're going to try to plant some switch into. But then on back behind, the brush hog trail continues. All right, so then we're about another 20 or 30 yards from that second spot that I stopped and talked to you. And we're at a spot now where the brush hog path kind of stops right here and makes a circle and then goes on over and joins up into that bigger area that I have brush hogged open. We're now about 100 yards from the truck, and we're about to where the fallow field is going to end. You'll notice there's a lot of saplings growing back up in here, and this is kind of the transition into those bigger woods. Then we got maples and cottonwoods, and it starts opening up back in there. But I got about an acre worth here, easily an acre worth, that is nothing but saplings, cottonwoods, young maples, thorn trees, all kinds of different stuff. And that's going to be an area where I really want to focus on going in and making beds, making different bedding units for the deer. I really think in this area I could probably get about 2 or 3 possible bigger doe group type bedding. But what I think I'm going to do, since I'm kind of encouraging the use of this line by individual deer, I'm going to continue that. I got a spot back here behind me, another one that I could do. And then as I go on down here, I think I'll use some of these saplings and I'll make one solitary bed on this side of everything. And then on that side of everything, I'll focus on making a couple really good conducive areas for larger doe type bedding areas, or maybe just make a whole bunch of individual beds to where in that area, a doe family might come in and say, we're going to bed in this entire area, and maybe 2 deer will use one bed that I made, 1 doe will go off and use another bed. But this is another bedding option within a bedding option of overgrowth, and then hopefully eventually switchgrass. Again though, the switchgrass may or may not take. We don't know. We're going to try to frost seed it and we'll see what happens. We did go in and we glyphosate treated it. We'll see what happens. I don't really need it to be a perfect stand, but if any of it does take and it looks like it's going to do good, and then we can do a prescribed burn through here 1 year, I'll reseed it at the end of that as well, and we'll see what takes off. But it's definitely an option. I'd like to get, you know, 2 or 3 acres of this into switchgrass or native grasses. It's just a good way to diversify your offerings to the deer, as well as providing, you know, pheasants love it, birds love it. So we'll see what happens. But the one thing I want to try to get away from eventually is letting some of this grow up in here, because I don't want this straight brush hogged path for the coyotes to just run. So areas like this I want to have grow back up. I may do some plantings in here and make this trail bump, and maybe 1 year make the brush hog come down a little ways, make a donut kinda to where it's not a harsh line. Coyotes really like to run those edges, and with this being a bedding area, I really don't want to encourage that. So that'll be one thing that I hope to change in the coming future. Hey guys, so I'm actually here by a sapling that's tried to grow now 2 years. When I first brush hogged, it actually survived the brush hogging and it sent up a bunch of shoots. And you'll see a zoomed in picture of just this tip at least. Every single one of these though has been browsed, and I get a lot of flack sometimes from guys saying, why are you hinge cutting oak trees? Well, I don't make a habit of it. It's not something I do a lot of, but I can provide a gross amount more food year round with oak trees down than I can with them up. I love acorns. I planted chestnut trees. I'm going to be leaving some acorn producing trees. However, I'm not going to sacrifice an open understory and void of food outside of acorn time just to keep oaks. All deer hunters treat them like they're a sacred commodity, and I get it. You know, I love mature trees as much as anybody else, but understory, and successional growth is how you provide food for your deer. It's not nut trees. They can be a great aspect of your plan and incorporate it into your property. But if you're only worried about growing timber and mature trees, but you're not in it to grow deer, which is what I'm concerned with. Oak trees are a great source of food for deer. When you fall them over, this is a good time to fall some of the saplings that you know are not going to be in good areas for nut production in the future. It's something to keep in mind. We do it all the time. We've top cut some in order to encourage scraping branches to grow and stuff like that, and hopefully that's something I can bring with you in the future. But while I was in here talking about bedding areas, I want to take a quick minute and just express to you the browse ability that young oak trees and even old oak trees, you lay them over, they're going to eat them. They love them. As you can tell, I really think that corridor, if I can encourage bedding there, the old shed hopefully at some point is going to become a deer blind actually, and it's only maybe 30 yards from where we park right there. If we can encourage that travel corridor right there to be utilized as a bed watch type behavior for the bucks, maybe even get a doe family or 2 tucked up in there. They're already utilizing it. I just want to enhance it, give them a little bit more options, and hopefully encourage more use out of that entire bedding area, which is just going to intensify the hunting potential of that pocket right there, that I can really get up on them and plan something. But I kind of hinted at it in that video. Down to the south of this exact spot where that previous video was is an area of predominantly 5 to 7 acres of cottonwoods. There is some maples, there is some big pines, but it's predominantly cottonwoods, and it's basically becoming such a mature timber that once you break through the edge of the roadway where there's a little bit of light coming in and a little bit of understory growth, once you break through that,
it's wide open, and it's a deer desert, if you will. Mature timber does nothing for deer. Even if it's oaks, it barely does anything for deer. So let's discuss that. Let's go to that part of the property and a recent visit that I made there prior to some planned logging.
Hey guys, so you're gonna kind of see a little bit of a walkthrough up and through here. Me and Pops spent the better part of yesterday and then a day during the week getting paths cleared through this openings back up in here. We're in about a 5 to 7 acre chunk right here, and predominantly it's a bunch of cottonwoods, loggable size cottonwoods. There's some pines and some maples. As you can tell, it's pretty bare. There's nothing really growing in here on the lower level. There's no cover, there's no herbaceous vegetation, there's no bedding, there's no browse, there's just nothing really. This is a deer desert. This is what I see a lot of people think when they get mature timber. They're like, Ty, I have 40 acres of woods, but I'm not seeing deer. That's because there's nothing here to give them. So this is a project just south of the bedding on the west side of my property, and we are going to turn this into a bedding area. But first I got to get all the loggable timber out, so I'm having them take everything and anything that they can get. We're doing this section this year, and then they're going to come back later this fall and do the northern part and get some of the pines and oaks out. That may sound counterintuitive because they're going to be doing that in September, possibly even October, but as you guys can see, disturbing the woods is not disturbing the deer. You may bump a few deer. Some of your very mature deer may take a couple days to filter back in, but there are tracks already up and throughout everywhere that me and Dad were yesterday. So these deer are used to it, especially here, so I'm not worried about it. If anything, all this logging is gonna do temporarily is bring all those treetops down, and all that fresh growth from this year is gonna give them one of the primary sources of nutrients right now, which is native browse. Right now, browse and forbs are their primary source. Woody browse, sorry. Woody browse, some biologists I've read, Craig Harper says that this time of year, some deer's diets anywhere from 65 to 85% of their digestive income, you know, the nutrients that they put into their body, the calories that they're intaking, are from woody browse. Now granted, on this property I've got the turnips and the brassicas over there, so that's a primary source for them right now as well. But woody browse is where they survive right now. So once I get all these treetops down, they're gonna have food. Once I start coming back in and selective hinge cutting and start sculpting this into the bedding area that I want it to be, the holding capacity of this property is gonna more than double, because I'm actually adding about 5 acres of beddable area. There's gonna be about an acre or two up in the corner I'm gonna leave aside for a pole barn structure and a pull-through driveway. But I'm actually doubling, if not tripling, the size of the bedding options on this side of the property by doing this logging, by then coming back and doing selective hinge cutting. I'm gonna plant not only some maples for future hinge cutting, because the deer love eating maples. I'm also gonna plant some high bush cranberry in here where there's good light, and some other native species that I haven't quite decided yet. So, but that's the project we've got going on right now, guys, and I wanted to talk to you about it because the one thing I can't stress enough, even if this was 100% mature oaks, white oaks, I don't care what it is, chestnut trees, whatever it is, when it gets to this point where there's nothing growing underneath them, it is a deer desert. It is, to me, it has zero value. There's only one time frame where deer are going to actually get any use out of it, and they're going to use it most likely in the nighttime, and that's when the acorn crop is dropping. But outside of that time frame, this is a deer desert. There is no reason for them to be here, so I would take out probably 90% of the trees, even if these were all mass-producing trees. So this is Ty. God bless, and let's take it back to the man cave to close up this video that you guys are watching.
Now I just want to kind of talk to you guys a little bit about my targeting. I had a really good question come in via email. It was from a follower. His name was Matt. I don't remember the last name, but Matt, thank you for this awesome question. And it was, Ty, I noticed that, you know, you've even hinted at, he must have went back and watched the video of Kicks, where I actually think you guys can't see him, but he's up in the corner here, where I actually think he may be a 2.5-year-old deer. And he goes, there's nothing wrong with that deer, but I'm just curious, how do you decide what you're going to chase and what makes the hit list, if you will, whether you like or hate that term? You know what I'm talking about when I say it. Kicks is a prime example of when I'm up the tree, I kind of let my gut preside over my decisions. When he came in, my first gut instinct was, left hand on the bow, get the right hand ready to put the release on the loop, and I didn't think twice about it. I do, after looking at his teeth and kind of studying some pictures of him, I believe he was a mega 2.5-year-old. But I try to, Matt and everybody else listening, I try to always go after the top 15% of deer. Now, amazingly, surprisingly, that deer's a while ago in my journey as far as hunting. I've killed 2 different bucks since then, 2 different variations of a certain degree. Junior, which is the buck I'm looking at behind the camera over my desk, he is a buck that grew up right before our eyes as we chased a buck named RD. And Junior was easily a 4.5-year-old minimum age class deer. He broke his beam and became just a giant 7-pointer that year, but his brow tines are over 7 inches long. I think they actually are closer to 8.5 than they are 8, but just an incredible deer. And he was one of the top 15% bucks out of all my properties. But I even go property to property. You know, this buck right here, which you can't quite see the top of it, but this is Splits, and you'll notice he's a very narrow racked buck. He's not the biggest deer. He only scored in the mid 120s. He had great character, great uniqueness to his rack. But one of the reasons why I shot him especially was because it was the first buck on my new property in that would have been 2016. And then this last year, 2017, we didn't really have many bucks that we were after because there wasn't many that really even tripped my trigger. So this last year was kind of a unique situation where I didn't settle. I guess there's a point where when I don't have any bona fide shooters in the area, I won't just settle for what, for if you will, and shift my 15% downward, I guess you could say. Unless it's by mistake anymore, 2.5-year-olds don't make my list. 3.5-year-olds in my area are automatically in the top 1/4% of all deer in the area. They just don't get that old in a lot of my high pressured areas. But this last year, I passed the biggest buck of my life, a buck that, you know, this is a buck from, I believe it was 2011, but I don't know for sure, I can't remember. I think it was 2011. He scores just shy of 130, around 129, and the deer that I passed actually had slightly better brows, did not have all the junk that this deer did, and I'm talking gross scores for what it's worth, and he didn't have this point here. So I think he was a 130-inch class deer, the buck that I passed. It's hard to see his brow tines in the video, but they're very dark. But they were easily 6-inch brows, probably, or pushing it. But I passed him because I had put it on my plan. You know, I let my gut tell me that night I was hunting, and it had to be either a personal best buck or it was nothing. Buck-wise, I was going to wait for Bertier, the buck that I was chasing, which hopefully will live into next year. And speaking of which, let's shift gears now as we end this video and discuss a little bit. First, what am I looking forward to in the 2018 season? Well, we have some really good young bucks. I'll go real quick. The Swamp property, there are a couple bucks out there that are both young. I filmed that like nub 6-pointer. Real wide jeans, big bodied. I think he was just a year and a half. He may have been a small 2.5-year-old deer. There's also Oddball out there. He's a buck with the weird swooping beam. He's been around for a while. I actually think he's a 3.5-year-old deer as is right now. He just hasn't grown into anything. So he could potentially turn into something cool and funky in his old age. There's actually the biggest buck that has been active out there, I guess you could say. This year we didn't have any mega giants step out there like we usually do. But he's a buck I haven't really named yet. He was a high but narrower 8-pointer. He busted his brow tine in the late season, but he's a good deer that I'm looking to go after. There's a couple other yearlings out there that he messed around with. Going to the River Bottom or the Homestead property because they're kind of one and the same, as well as the pasture property. They're all right there by my parents' place. There's a couple really nice. There's a high and tight little buck that I think is a 2.5-year-old. If he's not, he could be a no-go for me next year and be passed as a 2.5-year-old. But he could grow into something special. There's a couple other bucks out there. There's the one that I passed, which we actually believe made it into at least a week or so prior to Christmas. Can't wait to pull the cards there. They've been soaking for a long time. I'd love to get just one picture of him after season closed into January, just to know that, man, it would be incredible. I don't really think he was going to live the night I passed. I didn't think he would, and it actually is amazing to think that he actually may have made it, and there's even another buck out there, according to the neighbors, that's bigger. Switching gears to the new 22, Bertier is still alive, last I knew. You guys know he does have that injury. I'm not 100% sure if he can outlive coyotes. I'm hoping he tucks in up in some backyards. We don't get coyotes a lot out there to just linger. They kind of pass through at night because of all the people out there, you know. They don't do as well with people as deer do, so I'm hoping he can live. Because if he does, he's going to be an absolute beast, and he will be by far and above because of the story, the history, 2 years of pursuit, a close chance this year. He's kind of going to just be the default #1 deer no matter what happens elsewhere. Maybe the one I passed will be the #2 if he shows up and is around. But yeah, got some great opportunities. But that's about it for this episode of Embrace the Journey, the 2018 season. But looking into next episode, stay tuned because we're going to discuss a lot of different things. We're going to discuss frost seeding, and we're going to actually go to the property, and I'm going to do that hopefully. We have over 15 inches of snow right now, so I'm hoping I can wait a little bit and squeeze that into the end. I'm not going to frost seed with 15 inches of snow. I prefer like 1 to 3, if any. We're going to discuss the logging operation, which is occurring. I'm also going to begin to map out some of the changes or thoughts on the food plotting plans of the new 22, as well as begin to discuss one of the most uncomfortable topics, and that is when expectations for a property that you have permission to hunt on aren't quite met, or things don't go quite as you plan, and how are you going to react to them? Because we're actually going through that, me and Pops, on a couple different properties that we'll discuss in the future episodes. We're also going to tackle a giveaway that I'm going to have coming up, as well as I'm going to actually throw a buck up for you guys to name. It's all going to be done through email, and we'll see what happens with that. I'm trying to think of a couple other things. You know, that's probably going to be towards the beginning of March when we say this. So, I am going to be taking you guys along my pear grafting journey. We have a ton of Cleveland or Bradford pears, what we believe they are, one of those two, on the property. When I purchased the new 22, they're just everywhere. They're great for pollination, but they're not, you know, they don't produce anything. Some of them produce those little tiny marble-sized pears, and I don't really like that. Apologies for the light, but I'm just going to keep going. I was talking about the pear trees, that's right. So I'm going to take you on the journey with me as I go through trying to top work these pear trees into either Kiefer or Anjou. I may get some Moonglow scions, but I'm actually going to be going to the property here very soon and top cutting a lot of these pear trees in advance to when I go out there. I'm just going to cut maybe an inch or two more because you like to have that fresh cut for when you're grafting onto them. But I'm going to top work and get them all prepped right now while they're in dormancy, and then right about that time when things should start flowing the sap inside the trees and the buds start swelling, that's when I'm going to do the top working, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I can get a few of these not conducive pear trees to production of real big fruit for the deer to actually starting to incorporate more pears involved in the whole property. And from about August through maybe early October, depending on the pear, I have really, really high sugar, attractive food sources for these deer. And maybe a few of these bucks that I always have summer on my property will linger and hold on just a little bit longer, and maybe early October I'll have a shot at one of them. So that's what we got planned for the next episode and beyond. This is Ty. God bless. Good luck out there, and thank you so much for following along on this 2018 Embrace the Journey here at Small Acre Hunting. God bless. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Embrace the Journey, this 2018 season of Small Acre Hunting. I just want to take a quick minute and say thank you, and if you have time, please click the subscribe button. It really does help me out. Like, share with all your friends. And the giveaway that I did mention in this video is active until Saturday, February 24th. Make sure you check out the Facebook page Small Acre Hunting to enter for that. It's as simple as liking and tagging one other person in that post. Thanks guys, have a good one.